The days after that Sunday felt like walking through a fog. I moved through my house, cooked my meals, even tended to the flowers in my little garden, but my mind was always elsewhere. That voice message, that perfume, that unknown man's name glowing on her phone screen. I wasn't just Evelyn's mother anymore. I was her silent shadow. I began keeping a notebook tucked away in my nightstand. Each time she called or visited, I wrote down the details, the time, her mood, how long she stayed, what she wore. It might sound obsessive, but I needed patterns. I needed proof. And sometimes, when the loneliness of the night crept in and my chest ached with the weight of it all, writing gave me strength. 2 weeks later, my chance came. Evelyn called me late in the afternoon. "Mom, can you watch Caleb tonight? James is working late and I have a meeting." Her voice was light, but it cracked just a little at the end. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "Bring him over." When she arrived, she was dressed sharp, sharper than I'd seen in months. Her lipstick was deep red, her heels clicking against the floor with purpose. Caleb ran into my arms, clutching his little backpack, and I held him close, burying my face in his hair to hide my expression. "Don't wait up," she said quickly, almost too quickly. And then she was gone. My heart thumped in my ears. I watched through the lace curtains as her car disappeared down the street. A meeting, she had said. But what kind of meeting left a woman grinning like a schoolgirl in love? I put Caleb to bed early that night, kissed his forehead, and stood by the window long after he fell asleep. I didn't know where she went, but I promised myself I would find out. The next morning, when she came to collect Caleb, she wore the same clothes as the night before. Her hair was a little messy, her perfume faint but still there. She looked tired, but not the tired that comes from late-night work. No, this was the glow of someone who had been elsewhere, doing something, or someone, she shouldn't have. "How was your meeting?" I asked casually, setting Caleb's jacket on the chair. She froze for just a second, then forced a smile. "Long. Draining. You know how it is." I nodded, but my stomach turned. I knew exactly how it was. The week stretched on. Evelyn's visits grew more erratic. Some days she came with Caleb, other times she made excuses. "Too busy," she'd say. Or, "We'll come next week." Her husband, James, never called me, never stopped by. He worked long hours at the hospital, I knew, but something about his silence gnawed at me too. One Thursday afternoon, I decided enough was enough. I called Evelyn. "Sweetheart, why don't I come by and drop off some of that pie you love? The one with the brown sugar crust." There was a pause on the line, longer than it should have been. Mom, tonight's not good. James and I are both busy. Maybe this weekend?" I could hear voices in the background. A man's voice, not James's. His was deep, steady, the kind you don't forget. This one was younger, lighter, and it made my skin crawl. I clenched my jaw. "All right, darling. This weekend, then." I hung up before she could answer. The very next day, I went to her house anyway. I told myself it was just to drop off groceries. Milk, bread, eggs, things Caleb would need. But really, it was to see with my own eyes what was happening. When I pulled up to the curb, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. A car I didn't recognize was parked in the driveway. Sleek. Black. Too expensive for someone who claimed to be struggling with bills, as Evelyn often told me. I walked up the path, groceries in hand, and rang the bell. No answer. I rang again. Still nothing. But then, through the curtains, I saw movement. A shadow. 2 shadows. My heart hammered. I turned, forcing myself to walk back to my car as calmly as I could. But inside, I was on fire. Something was happening in that house, and I was going to uncover it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The memory of those shadows, the strange car, the male voice on the phone, it all tangled together in my mind. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, flipping through the pages of my careful observations. Dates, times, clothes, moods, excuses. It was all there, but still, it wasn't enough. I needed undeniable proof, and so I did something I never thought I would do. I called an old friend. Her name was Patricia, but everyone called her Patty. She was sharp as a tack, always had been. And years ago, she'd worked as a private investigator's assistant before retiring. If anyone could help me, it was her. "Lord have mercy," Patty said when I told her what I suspected. "You're Evelyn?" I always thought that girl was too slick for her own good. "I need to know the truth," I whispered, clutching the phone tight. "I can't sleep. I can't eat. I feel like I'm losing my mind." Patty sighed. "All right, I'll help. But you won't like what I find, Clara. You need to be ready for that." I closed my eyes, the tears welling up. I already don't like what I know. Over the next week, Patty did what she did best. She followed Evelyn's car, noted the addresses, took photos with her old camera. She called me every other day with updates, her voice steady, mine trembling. And then one evening, she showed up at my door with an envelope in hand. "Sit down, Clara," she said. "You're gonna need your strength." My fingers shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, grainy, but clear enough. Evelyn stepping out of that sleek black car. Evelyn. Walking into a restaurant with a man who wasn't her husband. Evelyn, laughing in his arms like a teenager in love. I clutched the pictures to my chest, gasping for breath. It was true. It was all true. Patty reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. "I'm sorry, honey. I really am." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "She's not just cheating on her husband. She's betraying me. She's lying to both of us." Patty's eyes narrowed. "So what are you gonna do?" I swallowed hard, staring at the photos. "I don't know, but I can't let this go on. Not anymore." The next Sunday, Evelyn came to dinner again. Caleb in tow. She acted normal, chatting lightly, smiling, even helping me wash the dishes afterward. But I saw her differently now. I saw the cracks in her mask, the lies behind her eyes. When she wasn't looking, I slipped one of Patty's photographs into my apron pocket. After dessert, when Caleb ran off to play, I placed the photo on the table between us. Evelyn froze. Her smile vanished. "What is this?" she whispered. I folded my hands, meeting her eyes. "You tell me." Her lips parted, her face pale. For a moment, she looked like a little girl again, caught with her hand in the cookie jar. But then, just as quickly, she straightened her shoulders and forced a laugh. "Mom, this is ridiculous. That's just a coworker. We had a late dinner after work, that's all." I shook my head slowly. "Don't lie to me, Evelyn, please. Not to me." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "I heard your voice message. I know you're hiding something. I'm not blind. I'm not stupid. Tell me the truth." For a moment, silence filled the kitchen. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. Caleb's laughter echoed faintly from the living room. And then, Evelyn slammed her hand on the table, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand," she snapped. "You never have." My chest tightened. "Then make me understand. Because right now, all I see is a daughter I don't recognize." Her lips trembled, her eyes darting away. "I can't," she whispered. "If you knew, you'd never forgive me." Tears stung my eyes. "Sweetheart, whatever it is, we can get through it. But not like this. Not with lies." But she only shook her head, standing abruptly. "I have to go." And before I could stop her, she grabbed Caleb and stormed out the door. I sat there alone, the photograph still on the table, my hands shaking, and I realized something chilling. My daughter wasn't just lying. She was hiding something far bigger than I could have imagined. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen long after Evelyn stormed out. The clock ticked past midnight, but I didn't move. The photograph still lay on the table, staring back at me like a silent accusation. I traced the edges of the picture with my fingertips, the ache in my chest growing heavier with each passing second. I thought about the girl I had raised, the child who used to curl up in my lap and beg me to sing her to sleep, the young woman who swore she'd never keep secrets from me. And now here she was, lying straight to my face, carrying a shadow that threatened to swallow us both whole. Sleep never came. My thoughts churned like storm clouds, heavy and restless. By morning, I had made up my mind. If Evelyn wouldn't tell me the truth, then I would uncover it myself. The following week, I kept my distance. She didn't call, didn't visit, and I didn't reach out. It pained me, but I knew she needed to think she had the upper hand. That way, she wouldn't notice me working in the background. I called Patty again. "I need more," I whispered. "One photograph isn't enough. I need to know who he is. I need to know everything." Patty didn't hesitate. "Then I'll dig deeper. But Clara, be prepared. Sometimes the truth cuts deeper than the lies." I thought I was prepared. I really did, but nothing could have readied me for what Patty discovered. A few days later, Patty came by again, her face grave. She carried another envelope, thicker this time. She laid it on the table, her hand lingering on top of it like she was holding down the weight of the world. "Are you sure you want this?" she asked. My hands trembled as I reached for it. "I have to know." Inside were more photographs. Evelyn and the same man, walking hand in hand through a park. Evelyn leaning across a cafe table, their heads close, laughing like they shared the world's most delicious secret. Evelyn climbing into his car, her hand brushing his cheek. And then, one picture that nearly made me drop the whole stack. It was Evelyn, standing in front of a modest little house. The man had his arm around her shoulders. She was holding a key. My breath caught in my throat. "She has another place?" I whispered. Patty nodded grimly. "Looks like it. Been going there twice a week, sometimes more." I pressed the photo to my chest, the air leaving my lungs. My daughter wasn't just sneaking around. She was building another life, one I knew nothing about. That Sunday, Evelyn didn't come by. Neither did Caleb. The silence in my house was deafening. I wandered through the rooms, each step heavier than the last. My eyes landed on the family photographs on the mantel. Evelyn's wedding day, her beaming smile as James kissed her hand. Caleb's first birthday, his little face smeared with frosting while Evelyn clapped proudly behind him. Had it all been a lie? I felt my knees buckle and I sank into my chair, burying my face in my hands. My body shook with sobs, the kind that racked my bones and made my chest ache. I wasn't just losing my daughter. I was losing my family, and yet, even in the midst of my despair, a spark of determination ignited within me. I wasn't going to sit back and let Evelyn throw everything away, not without a fight. The next day, I made a decision. I would go to that house. It took me nearly an hour to work up the courage. But eventually, I drove across town, the address Patty had given me scribbled on a scrap of paper. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, I parked a few houses down and watched. The place was small, unassuming, with blue shutters and a tidy front yard. A wind chime swayed gently on the porch, and then I saw her car pull up. I ducked down in my seat, my heart hammering as I watched Evelyn step out, her hair loose, her smile radiant. She walked up the path, her movements light, free, like she was stepping into the life she'd always wanted. The front door opened, and the man appeared. He wrapped his arms around her, kissed her like she belonged to him. I pressed my hand to my mouth, stifling the cry that threatened to escape. She disappeared inside, the door closing behind them. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the quiet little house, my world unraveling around me. I drove home in a daze. The image of that embrace burned into my mind. Once inside, I collapsed onto the couch, my body trembling. I wanted to call her, to scream, to demand answers. But instead, I picked up my notebook and began writing. I wrote everything I had seen. Every detail, every expression, every little sign that pointed to the truth I could no longer deny. And as I wrote, a thought crept into my mind. Dark, dangerous, but impossible to shake. If Evelyn could keep secrets from me, maybe I needed to keep a secret from her. Maybe the only way to save my family was to play her game better than she could. The following week, I pretended nothing was wrong. When Evelyn finally called, her voice was bright, cheerful, as if nothing had happened. "Mom, want to come over for dinner Friday? Caleb misses you." My throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady. "Of course, darling. I'd love to." When Friday came, I dressed carefully, fixing my hair, putting on the necklace Evelyn had given me years ago. I wanted her to see me as the mother she thought she could fool, The mother who knew nothing. But I knew everything. Dinner was awkward, though Evelyn tried to mask it. James sat at the head of the table, tired from work, but still kind and gentle as always. Caleb chattered happily, showing me his drawings. Evelyn smiled, laughed, poured wine, played the part of the perfect wife and daughter, but I could see the cracks. The way she avoided James's gaze, the way her hand shook just slightly as she refilled his glass, the way her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she ignored it with too much effort. When James excused himself to take a call from the hospital, I leaned across the table, my eyes locking onto hers. I went by the house. I whispered. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What house?" she asked, her voice trembling. I leaned back, my face calm, but my heart pounding. "You know which one?" Her eyes widened, her lips parting. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it again. But then, just as quickly, her expression hardened. "You had no right," she hissed. "And you had no right to lie to me," I shot back, my voice low and sharp. We stared at each other across the table, the silence between us heavy, dangerous. Then James returned, and Evelyn plastered on a smile, her mask slipping back into place. But I saw the truth, and I knew this battle had only just begun. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. You had no right. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had crossed a line. But what about the lines she had crossed? The vows she had broken? The family she was tearing apart? I closed my eyes, the weight of it pressing down on me. And then, in the stillness of the night, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to let my daughter destroy everything. If she wanted a war, then a war she would have. The days that followed felt like a silent standoff between us. Evelyn still called now and then, still dropped Caleb off with the same sweet smile. But there was something different in her eyes. A flicker of fear, a spark of defiance, and I knew she was waiting for me to make the next move, but I wasn't going to rush. No. If Evelyn thought she could keep playing her game, she had another thing coming. I had lived longer than her, loved harder than her, and I knew patience could be a weapon sharper than any knife. So I watched. I waited, and I listened. One afternoon, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My heart skipped as I opened it. It was a video. My breath caught in my throat as I pressed play. Evelyn sat in a car, laughing softly, her hand resting on the man's knee. His face wasn't visible, but his voice was. A low, smooth murmur that made my stomach twist. And then Evelyn leaned closer, whispering words I could barely process. "I wish I could just run away with you. Forget all of them. Just us." The video ended, leaving me frozen, the phone trembling in my hand. Who had sent this? Was it a warning, a threat, or someone trying to help me? Before I could even breathe, another message came through. "She's not who you think she is." My blood ran cold. I didn't tell Evelyn about the message. I didn't mention it to anyone, not even Patty. Instead, I tucked it deep inside my mind, like a shard of glass pressing against my thoughts. If someone else knew her secret, then the walls she had built around her lies were already starting to crack, and I would be ready to step through when they finally came crashing down. The next Sunday, Evelyn came by for dinner with Caleb. She was all smiles, carrying a pie she claimed she baked herself. I could see the effort she was putting into her act, but I could also see the strain beneath it. As we ate, Caleb chattered on about school, about his friends, about the little play he was going to be in next month. I laughed, clapped, encouraged him, but all the while my gaze kept drifting back to Evelyn. She caught me staring more than once, and each time she shifted in her seat, her smile faltering just a little. When Caleb excused himself to the living room to watch cartoons, I leaned across the table, my voice soft but sharp as glass. I got a message. Her fork froze. "What kind of message?" "A video." I let the word hang heavy in the air. "Of you. With him." Her face drained of color. "Who sent it?" she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know, but I think you do." Her hands clenched in her lap. Her eyes darted away, and in that moment I knew. She wasn't just afraid of me. She was afraid of someone else. Later that night, after Evelyn had gone, I sat in the dark of my kitchen, replaying the video again and again, the way she looked at him, the way her voice trembled with longing. But it wasn't just longing. There was fear there, too, hidden beneath the surface, and that terrified me more than anything else. The following week, I decided to push. I called her, my tone deliberately casual. "Evelyn, darling, I was thinking, maybe we should take Caleb to the park this weekend. Just you, me, and him, like old times." There was a long pause before she answered. I'll have to see. Things have been busy. Busy with what? I asked softly. Work? Life? You know? Her voice wavered. I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. Of course, dear. Just remember, nothing stays hidden forever. The silence on the other end told me she understood exactly what I meant. By Friday, she showed up at my door unannounced. Her face pale, her hands shaking. "Mom, we need to talk," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the room as though someone might be listening. I guided her to the couch, my heart racing. Finally, I thought. Finally, she's going to tell me everything. But instead, she sank into the cushions and buried her face in her hands. "I made a mistake," she choked out. A terrible mistake. Tears streamed down her face, but the words that followed weren't the confession I expected. "I can't get out," she whispered. "He won't let me go." My stomach twisted. "Who, Evelyn? Who won't let you go?" She shook her head violently. "I can't say. If I do, he'll ruin everything. He'll ruin all of us." Her words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something darker, something dangerous. That night I lay awake, Evelyn's words echoing in my head. He won't let me go. What had she gotten herself into? Who was this man who held such power over her? And why did I feel like the truth was only going to get worse from here? The following week, the mystery deepened. Patty called me in a panic. "Clara, you need to be careful. I've been digging into that man. The one with Evelyn." My heart raced. "What did you find?" There was a pause, heavy and uneasy. "He's not who he says he is. He's married. He's got a record. Fraud, assault, you name it. And Clara, he's dangerous." The phone slipped in my hand. Dangerous. The word hung in the air, suffocating me. I thanked Patty, my voice trembling, and hung up. And then I sat there in the silence, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. Evelyn hadn't just fallen for the wrong man. She had fallen into a trap, and if I didn't act soon, it could destroy us all. The next Sunday, she didn't show up. No call, no excuse, just silence. By Monday, my panic had reached a fever pitch. I drove across town, straight to that little house with the blue shutters. Her car was in the driveway. I approached the front door, my hands trembling, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst from my chest. I knocked once, twice. No answer. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. And then, faintly, I heard it. A muffled cry. My blood turned to ice. "Evelyn." I shouted, pounding on the door. Still no answer. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted. Locked. Without thinking, I stepped back, lifted my foot, and kicked with every ounce of strength I had. The door flew open, slamming against the wall, and what I saw inside made my heart stop. The scene before me froze my blood. Evelyn was sitting on the living room floor, her hands bound with rope, her face streaked with tears. The man loomed over her, his expression a twisted mix of rage and desperation. When the door slammed open, he spun toward me, his eyes wide. For a moment, neither of us moved, then his mouth curled into a sneer. "So, the mother shows up. Let her go!" I demanded, my voice shaking but firm. He laughed, low, cruel. "She doesn't want to be let go. Do you, Evelyn?" My daughter's eyes met mine, wide and terrified. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. That single word shattered me. I stepped forward, my hands trembling, my heart thundering. "You don't understand what you're doing," I said. "You're destroying her. You're destroying all of us." But he only shook his head. "She came to me. She wanted out of her perfect little life. And now she's mine." The room spun around me. Evelyn, my Evelyn, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. And me, standing at the edge of it, powerless. But something inside me shifted. I had raised this girl. I had carried her through fevers, heartbreaks, mistakes, and I wasn't about to let some monster tear her away from me. "You don't own her," I said, my voice steady now, "and you never will." Before he could respond, I grabbed the lamp from the table beside me and swung with all my strength. It connected with a sickening thud, and he stumbled back, roaring in pain. "Run, Evelyn!" I screamed. She scrambled to her feet, her hands still bound, and darted toward the door. I followed, my body trembling with adrenaline. We spilled out onto the porch just as a neighbor came running, drawn by the noise. Together, we pulled Evelyn to safety as the man staggered into the doorway, clutching his head. Within minutes, the police arrived. They dragged him away in handcuffs, his curses echoing through the night. And just like that, the nightmare was over. Or so I thought. At the station, Evelyn finally broke down. She told me everything. How she had met him at a conference 2 years ago. How he had charmed her, promised her a life full of excitement, freedom, passion. How she had slipped deeper and deeper into his web until she couldn't escape. He said if I ever left him, he'd ruin me. She sobbed. He said he'd tell James, take Caleb, destroy everything. I was so scared, Mom. I didn't know what to do. I held her, my own tears falling. "You should have come to me," I whispered. She shook her head. I was ashamed. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. Her voice cracked, and for the first time in years, I saw not the grown woman, not the rebellious daughter, but the little girl I had rocked to sleep, terrified of the dark. And in that moment, I knew. She had made mistakes. Terrible ones, but she was still my daughter, and I would fight for her until my last breath. The weeks that followed were a blur. There were police reports, court dates, therapy sessions. James found out, of course. There was no hiding it anymore. For a while, I thought he would leave her. He moved out, took Caleb with him. Evelyn fell apart, sinking into a grief so deep I feared she might never return. But slowly, so slowly, it began to shift. James saw her fight. He saw her honesty. And he saw the man behind bars, his threats silenced. And little by little, he came back. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but he came back. One evening, months later, I sat on my porch with Evelyn beside me. She was thinner, paler, but her eyes were clearer than they had been in years. "Do you hate me, Mom?" she asked softly. I turned to her, my throat tightening. "I could never hate you. You're my child. I hate what you did. I hate the choices you made, but you, I will always love you." Tears filled her eyes, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt my daughter truly return to me. But life has a cruel way of reminding us that nothing is ever truly over. A letter arrived one morning, months after the trial. No return address, no signature, just one sentence scrawled in messy handwriting. "This isn't finished." My hands shook as I read it, my heart plunging into my stomach. I looked up at Evelyn, who was sitting at the kitchen table, helping Caleb with his homework. Her laughter filled the room, warm and fragile. I slipped the letter into my pocket. Some truths, I decided, were better left unspoken. I would carry this burden alone if it meant protecting her. Because that's what mothers do. And so, my story doesn't end neatly, tied up with a bow. Life rarely does. There are scars that never fade, wounds that never fully heal. There are questions that may never be answered, and fears that linger in the shadows. But there is also love. Fierce, stubborn, unbreakable love. The kind that drives a mother to kick down doors, to face monsters, to keep fighting even when the world says she's already lost. And if you've ever been a mother, or had a mother, you know, that love never dies. Not even when the story is over. I never thought my heart could pound that fast at my age. It was late evening, and I was sitting alone in my quiet living room when my phone buzzed with a new message. I wasn't expecting anything special, just the usual reminders from the pharmacy, maybe a little good night from my grandson. But when I saw my daughter's name light up on the screen, my face softened with a smile. She doesn't call or text much these days, and every word from her feels like a blessing to me. I pressed play, and that's when my smile froze. Her voice came through, soft and low, dripping with affection, but not the kind a daughter should send her mother. "Baby, last night was amazing. I don't know how much longer I can keep this from her, but I don't care. You make me feel alive in ways he never has." My hand trembled, the phone nearly slipping from my fingers. She wasn't talking to me. This message wasn't meant for me. It was meant for her husband, and yet she wasn't talking to him either, because what she said next made my blood run cold. I can't believe she hasn't noticed yet, but as long as she keeps trusting me, we'll keep getting away with it. I gasped, my chest tightening, the room spinning around me. She was talking about me, about betraying me, about hiding something right under my nose. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I replayed it, over and over, each time hoping I had misheard. But no. The sweetness, the whispered confessions, the dangerous thrill in her tone. It was real. My own daughter was carrying on something behind my back, and suddenly, I knew. This wasn't just about her marriage. This was about me. About my family, about everything I had built and trusted. I dropped the phone on the couch, staring into the dim glow of the lamp. My ears rang with her voice, my heart hammering so loudly I thought it might burst. At that moment, I realized the life I thought I knew, the daughter I thought I raised, it was all a lie. But before I tell you how I uncovered the truth and how I fought back in ways my daughter never expected, let me take you back, because you need to know how we got here. You need to understand the love, the trust, and the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you will not believe what a mother is capable of when her heart is broken. Don't go anywhere now, because what I'm about to share will have you gripping your seat. You'll see why I couldn't stay silent after hearing that voice message, and why the ending of this story will haunt you long after it's over. My daughter, Evelyn, was always the bright one of the family. When she was little, she had this way of lighting up a room, her laugh, her confidence, the way she could talk circles around anyone, even grown folks. I was so proud of her. After my husband passed away years ago, she became my anchor. She checked on me, made sure I had food in the fridge, even came by every Sunday with her little boy to share a meal. At least that's how it used to be. Somewhere along the way, she changed. It wasn't sudden. No, like a tree slowly rotting from the inside, it took time before I noticed the cracks in her bark. She'd call less. She'd cancel our Sunday dinners. She'd look me in the eye, but only for a second before darting her gaze somewhere else. I thought maybe it was stress. Marriage isn't easy, I told myself. Raising a child takes everything out of you. I never wanted to judge her, never wanted to burden her with my worries. After all, she was the one carrying the heavy load of life now, not me. I had already lived my battles. But that night, sitting alone with her voice message echoing in my head, I realized just how blind I'd been. I didn't sleep. I sat there until dawn, clutching that phone like it was a grenade about to go off. My coffee went cold on the table. I stared at the faded photographs on the wall. Evelyn as a toddler in her pink Easter dress. Evelyn at her high school graduation. Evelyn on her wedding day smiling so bright I thought no storm could ever touch her. And now this. By the time morning came, I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman with a mission. Something inside me hardened, like steel being forged in fire. If my daughter thought she could deceive me, if she thought she could drag my family's name through the mud without consequence, she had another thing coming. But I had to be careful. I couldn't storm into her house and demand answers. If I accused her too soon, she'd deny it. She'd twist the truth, make me seem like the crazy one. No, if I was going to confront her, I needed proof, so I made myself a plan. The first step was simple. I would watch her. Listen to her. Learn her patterns. And then, when the time was right, I would strike. The very next Sunday, Evelyn showed up at my door like she always used to. Her little boy, my sweet grandson Caleb, ran into my arms the moment he saw me. His laughter filled my empty house, and for a moment I almost forgot the ache in my chest. Almost. But then Evelyn walked in. She looked different. Her hair was styled, her nails freshly painted, and she carried herself with the glow of someone who had a secret. She hugged me lightly, too lightly, and when she pulled away, I caught the faintest whiff of perfume I hadn't smelled before. "You look nice," I said, keeping my tone steady. She smiled, quick and practiced. "Oh, just wanted to treat myself a little. You know how it is." I nodded, hiding the storm inside me. Dinner was quiet that night. She kept checking her phone under the table, her fingers dancing across the screen. When Caleb asked her a question, she barely looked up, just muttered a distracted answer. I watched her every move, memorized every detail, and then it happened. Her phone buzzed, and before she could snatch it up, I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. It wasn't her husband's. It was a name I didn't recognize. A man's name. She must have noticed my eyes on her, because she quickly shoved the phone into her purse and forced a smile. "Sorry. Mom. Work stuff. Work stuff at 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening." I let it slide, for now, but inside I knew. I had my first piece of the puzzle. That night, after they left, I sat in Caleb's empty chair and thought about everything. My daughter, my only daughter, was living a double life. And not only that, she was dragging me into it, using my trust as her cover. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But more than anything, I wanted answers. And I was going to get them. Even if it tore my heart to pieces.